Now, Nigeria's President Goodluck Jonathan has revealed plans to roll out an economic stimulus package for the northeastern part of the country, stating that the restoration of peace and security in the terror-plagued region was essential for the successful implementation of the measures and actions envisaged in the intervention program. Joining me in the studio to discuss the proposed economic stimulus is Dr. Ayo Teriba, the CEO of Economic Associates. Thank you so much, Dr. Teriba, for joining us. So what the president has announced is very short in detail. We do not know what exactly is being planned, but in your view, given what we know about that region, what do you think is needed at this time to stimulate the economy in that place? Of course, he has already put that caveat that we need to stabilize the security situation in that place, but as soon as that is done, your take on what needs to be done after that?
Right. The president's speech is coming at the summit of the 6 states in the Northeast. And this is the second time the Northeastern states will hold a summit on the economy of the region. And I think precisely that's what needs to be done. That states within each region need to dialogue more often. This is their second summit. If they could have this summit more regularly, if they could have it more frequently, at least issues get talked about, risks get identified, and proactive action can be taken, not just by the president, not just at the federal level. Each state, will identify risks early and act. The region as a whole will identify risk early and act. Right, and whatever is necessary at the national level will also be done to complement actions at the other 2 levels.
Right, but from your knowledge of the region, many people suggest that the North is known for agriculture. That's an area that needs significant emphasis in whatever plan that the government is looking to do. Your take on the region's economy and how that is changing?
Well, the advantage of the Northeast compared to the Northwest, where 60% of crop production in Nigeria takes place, or compared to the North Central, where 30% of crop production in Nigeria takes place. The advantage of the North is the comparative advantage of the Northeast is not agriculture.
Oh, I see.
They produce only 5% of agriculture, of crop production. Yeah, they do livestock, but again, the total livestock happening in Nigeria is not 1 trillion. Right. Where you have 12 trillion in crops. Right. So their advantage is in metal ores. But until you can connect the Northeast to the coast by rail, you are unlikely to, metal ore is unlikely to be a serious source of economic activity.
Right, so it still brings us back to the need for infrastructure, and of course integrating the regions.
You need to connect the Northeast to the other regions and connect the Northeast to the ports for the economy of that region to boom. But it's not only the big issue that should be talked about. Regular meetings, there will be short-term issues, there will be medium-term issues, there will be long-term issues. So the fact that a summit is taking place for the second time is good development. It means that we've done it only once before, in that region. This is the second time. Let's hope that it becomes more regular. Let's hope that it becomes harder, so problems can be identified. I think eventually they'll get to the big issues. Okay,
you've mentioned metal ores as an interesting area of focus or comparative advantage for that region. And if you look at Nigeria, I guess that is, in my view, a missing link in economic programs. We haven't seen that strong emphasis into mining. And
if you know what metal prices are doing on the world market, at the moment, it would have been, a third track for Nigeria's benefiting, from what's happening on the global scene. We gain from oil, but that's confined to the South-South, primarily 90% South-South. We gain from crops and agri-crop materials, that's confined to the Northwest and North Central. If you could, exploit metal ores, which is concentrated in the Northeast, but found elsewhere, around the country, but that would have been their own, advantage. And you could also link the Southeast with the coast. You'd get coal, produced there.
But I guess it won't be an overnight project because, like you mentioned, there's a need to build infrastructure, the rail lines, for instance, to connect the coast to this. If the government were to take a very strong stance and say we want to get into mining aggressively, how quickly do you think Nigeria can be a major player globally for the mining of all several metal ores?
Oh, well, the case for regional integration is not confined to metal ores. How soon you could get to produce from the time you, the key issue is transportation is key to competitiveness. You can't truck them, but it's not just mining, it's agriculture as well. It's industry, it's manufacturing. There's a limit to which trucking, can make you competitive. As a matter of fact, trucking makes you uncompetitive. But if you had rail links across all the regions, a lot more activities will become possible, as in the case of heavy metal, and will become competitive. No, so the question is not how soon will the sectors respond. This question is how soon can Nigeria get its act together
in terms of providing that infrastructure
and make real work. If you make real work, Agric will gain in terms of transporting inputs and transporting output. Much of the output rot on the farm. Much of the output is not worth harvesting. If you think of the cost of transporting them to where they'll be semi-processed, right? So if you do rail, quietly you would have improved the competitiveness of agriculture. Right. You would have increased the competitiveness of coal, of metal ores, of every sector.
The terror attacks in the northeast, and it seems that's a real stronghold for Boko Haram, for instance, has put Nigeria out there for the wrong reasons, if you like, and it's been very negative publicity for the country, for investors who are coming to this part of the world. So I want to hear about the cost of what is happening in the northeast for the economy. We've seen GDP still fairly robust, and many people saying that we'll probably see 7% into next year. But do you think that this is something that is taking 1 or 2% GDP growth away from Nigeria, in your view?
And that's the key issue. You see, it's we should be careful about what's the cause and what's the effect. I think economic marginalization is at the root of the security problems in the northeast. Nigerian economy last year produced 40 trillion naira worth of value added. Only about 1.3 trillion came from the northeast. So they're not talking of 10%, which would have been 4 trillion. They're not talking of 5%, which would be 2 trillion. They are talking about a little over 2.5% of GDP in Nigeria. So there's no way. It's a threat, to productive activities in other regions. But the amount of productive activity taking place within the region is already marginalized. And in the phase of economic marginalization, the residents will become restive. And it is that restiveness that is producing what we see, right, that is creating a threat to economic activity.
So that need for inclusive growth, I think, really
is important to reduce the security.
Your assessment of the situation. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Dr. Ayateriba.